last thing we're going to talk about here, and I've decided on the fly here, Jack, we're going to break down the schedule in quadrants.
Okay, I like this.
That way we can kind of see how we're going to do and get 3 shows out of it. Because, there won't be weeks like this where there's a ton of news and we're going to need content potentially. So we're going to do it in kind of quadrants.
I like this.
But the schedule is out. And as we look at the overview here, I don't think it's that bad. You play 3 of your first 4 at home, 4 of your first 6 at home. You don't have 2 road games in a row. Yes, you play at Florida State. Who knows what they're going to be? You play at NC State. Who knows who they're going to be? You play at Georgia Tech. But like to me, when this schedule came out, I was like, pretty good. I don't mind it.
Yeah. There's some winnable spots. There's a couple tough spots. I mean, we all know how tough it is to play against ODU. The Monarchs have seemingly pulled out some interesting wins over the years against Virginia Tech, but that typically happens down in Norfolk, not in Blacksburg. But this is a nice schedule for Virginia Tech, and I feel like we're starting to rehash some of the storylines, some of the things we were saying last year about Virginia Tech and their schedule and what made us believe that they could win the ACC. And that kind of worries me, but definitely, I mean, if you're looking at those first 4 games, there's a real chance to go 4-0.
Well, Vegas doesn't think so.
I know.
The Beamer Bowl, as we'll probably talk about quite a bit, Shane Beamer going against his father's school, is South Carolina's about 8-9 point favorite. Now, look, it's kind of ridiculous to put lines out now, but there are people who will probably bet this sort of thing. Anytime, Jack, my general rule is, unfortunately, anytime the SEC plays the ACC, I'm usually going to side with the SEC. I can't imagine that there won't be more South Carolina fans at this game than Tech fans. And Shane Beamer's done a tremendous job in South Carolina.
Shane Beamer is a darn good football coach, and it is a darn shame that Virginia Tech did not hire him when they had a chance.
See, I don't think he was ready. I didn't think he was ready. But then, I mean, obviously, look, he's in the SEC and succeeding. So that kind of shows it. But like, I could have seen him going the other direction, and then it becomes harder because he's at his dad's school. Now he's kind of away from it. Now maybe he comes back, but we probably lost him now because South Carolina is never going to let him go. But it would have been a very difficult hire for him to go to his dad's school and try and resurrect the program. So I can understand why they didn't do it.
That's a very good point, because if you fail, it's like hiring a former player. It's always tougher to fire someone who has emotional attachment to a team.
Right. Then next week, it's Vanderbilt coming to Blacksburg. And I'm assuming I assume that Tech is going to be more serious this time, because let's be honest now. They show up in Nashville and half the stadium is Hokies fans, and they're playing at a place where like construction's going on around the stadium, and it's Vanderbilt. And you're like, and you're I think it was 10, 11 point favorites on the road.
Maybe more.
It might have been more. It might have been up to 13 or whatever. And so like, I still maintain they didn't take that game seriously until it was too late. And then they went to overtime and then they lost. So, and Diego Pavia will be there for his 15th year of school. So that automatically gives Vanderbilt a chance here. But you'd like to think coming home, a home opener, unless they play terribly and embarrassingly bad against South Carolina, it'll be a good atmosphere for that game. Yeah, you're right. I'd like to think that this is going to be a win, but who knows?
I mean, yeah, Vanderbilt showed some life last season. Maybe their program's starting to turn a corner, but I mean, I got to emphasize it again. It's Vanderbilt. You lost to them last year. You better be locked in. That if you start 0-2, Brent Pry's seat, maybe it's too early to be saying this, but if you start 0-2 with a loss against Vanderbilt and a loss against the coach that could have been yours, Brent Pry's seat goes from warm to scolding hot. Yes. I think it'll be tough for Brent Pry, but I don't think he's starting 0-2. I think Brent Pry is a darn good football coach.
Well, and don't forget, short week, because you're playing Sunday against South Carolina, so you have one less day to prepare for Vanderbilt. Now, granted, you can just look at a lot of film from last year. Vanderbilt, I'm sure, has roster changes and things like that. We'll certainly get into that as we get closer to that game, but short week with a new coaching staff, some problems could potentially be there. It's just, yes, you're right. They should win this game. I usually give the home teams benefit of the doubt, but there are some reasons to worry about Vanderbilt on September 6th.
2 SEC schools to open it up to, but something that will be kind of an under the radar thing to monitor will be new defensive coordinator Seifkes implementing his new defensive scheme. How much of his playbook is implemented? How well do the guys pick it up? How quickly do they pick it up? Because that defense is going to look, based on what he was saying about needing multiple looks, assumes that he's going to play a complex defensive scheme, or maybe a little bit more of a complex scheme than what the Hokies are used to. That could mean some growing pains in those first few weeks. Defense may look a lot different in weeks, 10 and 11, 12 than they do in weeks 1 and 2. So how quickly does the defense figure out the new system? And that will be key in if they're able to win either one of the South Carolina or Vanderbilt games.
And as you said, like, schedule lightens up now. Game 3, ODU comes to town. Tech wins that game usually at home. ODU is a young team. They've got some talent. We saw it last year. They played well at stretches. I like Ricky Ronnie as a head coach.
I love Ricky Ronnie.
They will never be intimidated by Tech. It's not like it used to be where Tech had that much more talent that going into Blacksburg was, Tech is the more talented roster. But ODU's no longer scared of them. They don't need to be like, oh, my goodness, it's Virginia Tech. But, I mean, obviously, look, Tech's going to win this game. It's just by how much and what can they do? Is this the game where everybody plays? Or is it a game where it's close and Kyron Jones is playing all 4 quarters? I don't know.
We'll see. And if you don't have a win through the first 3 weeks, but you will. If
they start out 0-3, the crowd at the September 20th game against Wofford will be one of the worst you'll probably see. And it'll probably get the UPN treatment. It probably will be on the channel that they have where they put like the bad games.
ESPNU?
No. UPN, right? That's the channel. CW, excuse me. I don't know what UPN is.
I have no idea what UPN. I thought you were saying UPS, and I was like, all right. Yeah, we will ship that game back to Wofford.
No, it's okay. That's the Paramount Network. Okay.
Oh, okay.
But yes, you are correct. The CW. It would be the CW game, and it would be an embarrassing crowd. And it would be a lot of pressure if you're 0-3 and an FCS program comes to town. Like, you have to win that game. And not only do you have to win that game, you have to win that game by a nice margin to give people confidence that this season is not going to be an absolute disaster.
And get your new defensive coordinator a little confidence against his former employer. But Matt, at this point, finished first quadrant. Those are 4 games. What are we thinking the record will be after those 4? My guess is 3-1.
Oh God.
When you can change this, we're not locking in what it is.
Obviously not.
Obviously not.
I'm going 2-2.
Really? Where are the 2 losses?
I think the Vanderbilt game's a loss. Wow. Last year kind of beat me down a little bit. I was just and some of you may have been listening to our shows here in Richmond and may have, kind of followed me on Twitter where I promoted this. But like last year, I was so full of excitement and I felt so high on this team. And it was just every week, it was just like I kept getting beaten up every week. And I kept feeling lower and lower for the program. So it's like if I give any sort of expectations, they never reach those expectations. So to me, let's say 2-2. They start out 0-2. The seat gets hot. They win the next 2. And then, the season really starts week 5.
And we'll save week 5 for next week because that's quadrant 2, is it not?
As it is.
That's a tease. That's what they call a tease in the business.
I just, and it's so funny because as you said, like we're not alums, we're fans. We're not diehard fans, but
media.
We're media. We're not supposed to root for anybody really. We're rooting for content for our respective shows. But like I put a lot into my Tech winning. I went to ACC Media Day and I was talking to media members and I'm like, yeah, I'm the guy who voted for Tech to win the ACC championship. And they're like, why? Really? What's up with that? And I'm like, I explained it. And it's just every week. The Vanderbilt game just bothered me so much. It's just, they didn't take Vanderbilt seriously and then it showed and then they lost and now you're behind everything. And it's just, that was just such a miserable season that I can't sit here and be like, yeah, they're going to go 3-1 because that's what they're supposed to do. Like they didn't do what they were supposed to do last year.
Yeah, they were supposed to win the ACC, bringing back 99.9% of their starters a year ago, and they fell on their face. And whether that was injuries, whether that was coaching, whatever it may be, this is a put up or shut up season for Virginia Tech football. And it's going to be very fun to cover. It's going to be very fun to watch, and it's going to see how it all unfolds. I can't wait to cover it throughout this season because Virginia Tech, this is your time to shine.
And this is, this tests the whole bowl theory because, in 2023, they play that game in the Military Bowl against Tulane. It's pouring rain. Tulane has everybody opting out. Tech could have very easily done the same. They all came back. They all played in the game, and they destroyed Tulane, and they laid the groundwork for a tremendous offseason. And then the very first game, they lose in overtime. And then you lose at home to Rutgers in a game that you probably should have won. The ACC stole the Miami game from you because they had an agenda that was going to help Miami.
All right.
And then but then the season ends and there's no momentum from last year. There is none. So can they build the momentum starting with spring practice and then the practice leading up to the first game? Can they build momentum when there is absolutely none in the tank right now?
Shoot, there may be negative momentum. How do you start from behind the starting blocks?
Yeah, it's just, this is because I was always a believer, Jack, that bowls built momentum. When your team wins a bowl game, like we'll go to your program, JMU is going to have a ton of momentum because they won their bowl game in the offseason. Now, granted, the roster changes, and this happens with all the teams that are in bowl games, but like in theory, you start out the spring coming off of a win, which only half of the teams in bowl games get. And so you figure there's momentum there, but Tech has none of that now because nobody wanted to play against Minnesota and the program was low and a lot of people transferred out and they wasted an opportunity. So can they start from scratch and get something going this coming season?
I'll push back a little bit. I don't think bowls are all that important for pushing and springboarding the team into the next season. So I am very intrigued to see, kind of along with you, does it even matter? I mean, you kind of had a disappointing season. How do you use it? Does the bowl matter? I don't think it does. And I think it actually kind of helps that you're starting from scratch with 2 new offensive coordinators. Get the bad taste of last year out of the mouth. Brent Pry, this is your time. Figure it out. And it's a blank slate. Tabula Rusa. Is that what it's called? I think that's the
Tabula Rasa.
Yeah, that. You got a blank slate here. Is that what you're starting off with in 2025? Throw everything else out the window and get a win at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia against South Carolina on August 31st.